If you look at what has been a defining moment of the year 2018, perhaps the most significant would be the MeToo movement, fueled over social media. It was an acknowledgement that traditional legal avenues had failed, and it offered women an alternative way to deal with sexual harassment, to take back the power. Since it started in October, multiple women have come out and named the harassers, some choosing to stick to the social media route to just name and shame them. Others have gone ahead and gone to the police and are pursuing their cases legally. Reality Check today looks at a case which has got immensely complicated. On the 18th this month, Assistant Vice President of Genpact, Swaroop Raj, was called into his office and suspended by his employers. This is because two of his women colleagues had complained just a day before that. While details of the complaint were not made public, Genpact has said that these were very serious complaints of sexual harassment. That same day, Swaroop Raj committed suicide, and soon after, his wife and family went to the police and lodged an FIR against the two women. Those in the Internal Complaints Committee and the top officials too. So here's what we're asking on Reality Check over the next half hour. Do you have to bear the burden of what happens after you name your sexual harasser? When the police issues notice to a company and asks them why they suspended someone, does that send a signal to other companies that acting on sexual harassment can be a tricky area, that it could go either way? What are the lessons from this very tragic case that we can take away for ourselves? Now, we have no way of knowing whether the accusations leveled at Swaroop Raj were true or false. The women are not speaking, and that internal committee, the ICC, is still probing that, and neither is their lawyer. We just know that the family are protesting. The family of Swaroop Raj are protesting, and they're protesting outside the Genpact office, and they have a Facebook page dedicated to justice for him because they say that his employers acted unfairly. Now, let me just show you why they say that their employers acted unfairly. They say that Swaroop Raj was suspended without hearing his side, that he was not even allowed to work from home. They took away his iCard laptop, thereby branding him offender. But they say, the other side says, that they were just doing what was legally required of them, and that they were following the protocol that is set aside for dealing with sexual harassment complaints. So we'll hear from Swaroop Raj's wife, who strongly believes that he was innocent. Why? Because she says he couldn't have harassed anyone. But first, here's what the police say about why they booked the women complainants.
इसमें जो कंप्लेंट उनके फैमिली के द्वारा दी गई थी, उसके ऊपर FIR पंजीकृत की गई है थाना सूरजपुर में, जिसके संबंध में जो इन्वेस्टिगेशन है वो इस समय जारी है। जो इसमें जितने भी जिनके खिलाफ नामदर्ज रिपोर्ट हैं, एज वेल एज जिनकी तरफ से शिकायत की गई है, जो शिकायत करता है उनके स्टेटमेंट्स लिए गए हैं, एज वेल एज जो कंप्लेंट रजिस्टर की गई थी कंपनी में, जो कंप्लेंट की गई थी, उस कंप्लेंट पे जो इंक्वायरी कमेटी थी, इंक्वायरी कमेटी ने जो आगे कंपनी के द्वारा कार्रवाई की गई है उसके संबंधित डॉक्यूमेंट्स मांगे गए हैं, एज वेल एज 161 की स्टेटमेंट के लिए उनको नोटिस दिए गए हैं, और उनके द्वारा जिनके ऊपर आरोप लगाए गए हैं कंपनी के जो कर्मचारी हैं उनके द्वारा इन्वेस्टिगेशन में कोऑपरेट करने का एश्योर किया गया है, और संबंधित जो इन्वेस्टिगेशन है वो आगे जारी है।
So the police is very clear. They are saying they are now trying to determine whether the complaints that the women made were true or false. So they have stepped in now and they're seeking statements from all of them. They say that if the complaint is false, then maybe the abetment to suicide will stand. So that's what they're looking at. It's become intensely complicated in that sense. And we will be speaking to our guests in just a bit. But first, I spoke earlier with Kriti Srivastav, the wife of Swaroop Raj, and the person who is leading this fight for justice now. As I said, they have a Facebook page, they've got everybody involved. They are now saying they're fighting for this case. So I spoke to her a while earlier. Thank you so much for speaking to us. I wanted to just start by first conveying all our condolences. It's such a tragic story. I wanted to start by asking you why you filed this FIR.
I filed this FIR for the very reason because, you know, that something happened to my husband which I was not aware of. And something happened with him just in a day. And the reason, you know, behind that happening was an allegation which I don't think so can ever happen to him, or he can ever do anything like that.
And I completely understand that, and you know, we all love the men in our life, but have you thought of the possibility that he could have done that?
No, actually, we got married like, you know, around 1 year, 9 months back, and I know Swaroop's like since 3 years. So I very well know he is not a person who could have ever done something like this. And also keeping in mind, like, you know, the kind of person he was, it is just impossible to believe that he has done something like that. He hasn't. And that's what exactly he has written at the end to me, that he was clean. He was completely clean.
I've seen that suicide note as well that was written by him. And I appreciate you talking to us. Who do you blame in this entire tragedy?
I blame the company, the management of the company. I blame the person, the committee sitting over there who took this decision just in a day. And I really want to blame those 2 girls who actually, you know, put that kind of allegation on him.
So you blame the women?
Yes, I do blame them as well, because I'm 100% sure that's a false allegation.
Because of your love for him?
Not only because of my love, but also the kind of person he was. If you're aware, he has given like 11 years to this company, and he has a spotless career, not even a single allegation on him. You can check how people-centric he was. He was the people manager. He received awards for people manager. So who's a people manager? Person who's loved by everyone. He was handling such big teams. He was having so many girls around.
No, I understand. But do you understand that the company is legally bound to carry out an inquiry?
They should carry out an inquiry. That is what I actually wanted it in Swaroop's case, you know. Swaroop was a person who was completely fine, happy till 18th morning. And as soon as he went to the office, he was called for a meeting, and there he received the suspension letter, and he did this to himself. So that means everything happened in just 1 day without investigation.
How far do you want to pursue this?
I'm going to take legal action very soon on this. I've already, as you know, I've already given an FIR. It has already been registered with police. And police is investigating, and I really want they should investigate this case thoroughly.
So Kriti Srivastav, they're speaking to NDTV about her side of the story. This is, of course, one side of the story. The 2 women and their lawyer who leveled those allegations, they haven't come out at all. And one of the things that in their Facebook page that you see a lot of backlash now on the 2 women complainants, who say that they are the ones responsible for Swaroop Raj taking this step. But one of the things that we found out was the fact that his identity, along with the complainant's identity, the company says they kept completely secret, and Kriti Srivastav works with Genpact as well, and even she didn't know that her husband had faced these allegations till she found it from the suicide note. So they're saying that, look, it's not that, you know, there was, because his suicide note points out that he was very afraid that people were going to look at him in a particular way, and that his dignity had been compromised, but the company says it had been kept completely confidential, and it was only from his letter that his wife, who also works for the same company, found out. So there are so many things to talk about. Also, what are the lessons from this way, and what happens legally to all the people involved in this case? To talk about that, we have Rijuta Shinde. For those who know, Rijuta Shinde is a lawyer who came out during the entire MeToo movement to offer her services to help a lot of the complainants with their complaints, and she said she would do it pro bono. We have Sandhya Menon, journalist and writer, who was one of the first people to come out and name her harassers. So she's one who's followed this. Now she's helping other people in their fight as well. And to get us the corporate perspective as to how companies deal with this, how will this case perhaps, will it change the way companies look at it? We have Ramesh Kalasam. He joins us. He's the CEO, IndiaTech.org. Rujuta, I want to start with you because I want to start with some of the things that the family has said. Now, they say why they blame the company and this women for the suicide of Swaroop Rajesh, because they are saying that they didn't listen to the other side. They said that the fact that things happened so quickly, that on the 18th, a day after the allegations were leveled, just a day after, he was immediately sent home, that he wasn't allowed to take his computer, he wasn't allowed to work from home. I wanted to ask you, was that process, of course, none of us know all the details, but from what has come out till now, from what we know till now, was due process followed?
Right. So, every company has its own policies, but according to law, when there's an ICC inquiry that is going on, then you have to either, if there's a written application made by the person who has made the accusations, that she is feeling threatened, or she feels that, you know, the person being there could somehow affect the inquiry, then that person can either be transferred to another branch, or she can be transferred to another branch, or she can be sent on a paid leave. So I don't know what the policies of Genpact are, but or maybe they thought that because of his position, he probably needs to step down for a more fair inquiry to be conducted. But I think a better step to take would be either send either of the parties on a paid leave or transfer them to different offices.
Right, because
instead of directly suspending someone, because a suspension is actually a negative record on your bio.
Okay, so you're saying perhaps that is, it depends on various companies and their policies, which is what our other lawyers also told us. But you're saying perhaps this has a negative connotation, which may be too brash a step to take before the committee concludes, right?
Right. So according to law, it's you can either transfer either of the parties to a different branch of the company, or you can send them on paid leave, which is not a negative action. It's just something that is needed to be done during the course of the investigation.
Because the whole objective is that you can't have, the company says that he was their senior, so they needed him. He couldn't, in fact, be in any way, you know, he couldn't work with them at all. So they said that that was necessary. But you're saying that perhaps working from home could have been an option, you're saying?
Right. Just so that the person is not present and in somehow, you know, affecting how the inquiry is going. So they could have removed him from the premises, yet kept him in employment.
Okay, so that's an important point, and thank you for just reality checking that. Sandhya Menon, you know, along with you, I also reached out to Chinmay Sripata. For our viewers, just to know that Chinmay Sripata is also a Carnatic singer who also came out in this MeToo movement. And Sandhya, what she mentioned was that the two women complainants in the ICC of their own company, not in the media, no public naming and shaming, and that is the most facile way women can report sexual misconduct. These interviews from others who say he didn't make them uncomfortable, doesn't negate that he may have misbehaved with the women in question. So a lot of people, so she says that she believes the women, and also the way they did it was perhaps the right way to go. The fact that they face so much backlash now, what do you make of that?
So one of the first things I think we need to get clear when we say that we believe women is the fact that we don't just blindly believe what they're saying, but we're saying that we take it seriously enough to follow, to help them follow due process, right? And the backlash right now is completely unfortunate because here are women. So I've said this often, right? When women come out and speak about the harassment that they have faced, it takes a lot of overcoming of many things. One of the biggest things is overcoming the fact that we feel guilty or we care for the perpetrator. We wonder what's going to happen to his life. I mean, am I betraying him? Have I ruined his life? Those are things that we need to overcome to call out injustice that's happened to us. And for these two women who went via the due process that everyone is yelling at us about. Me Too is all about, you know, public naming and shaming. But here are two women who did not do this on social media, who did not go around talking in the office grapevine. They went via process. And now if you're going to book them for something that is still not proved, I'd like to go back to what Rutuja said earlier. It was 1.5 days of investigation before Swaroop committed suicide, and it's a terrible thing. I mean, I cannot imagine what his wife and his family go through. But the fact is, these women are now stuck, and now tons of women are going to think twice about calling out. I'm not saying suicide is shouldn't be talked about. I'm just saying that the backlash that they're facing is completely and entirely unfair. And if process is broken in Genpact, and I'm not saying it is, and this is the one conversation that in my reading over the last 2 months, I've seen for years that's happening, that suspensions and news of complaint to the person who's been accused have to be handled sensitively precisely for this reason, and not just confidentiality, but to be able to talk to him and say, hey, this is what's going on, this is going to be the process. Genpact's email was a bit cold, I thought, and I think these cases need to be sensitively handled depending on the person and not so much the crime. So you've got to know your employee before you handle it the way you've handled. And the backlash the women are facing is just completely unfortunate.
Ramesh Kalasam, I want you to weigh in on how you see the handling. Give us the corporate side of it, because you just heard both Rutuja and Sandhya talk about how things could have been perhaps handled differently, in that should he have been suspended immediately, could there have been other alternatives? How do you see the options that they took?
Well, what happened in this case is quite unfortunate in terms of the death, but however, in terms of processes, if you look at what responsible corporates have been putting in place, is that they are complying the law and they will have to comply with the processes. And during the compliance of such kind of processes, what's also critical is the fact that education for employees would have been critical. Education is not only in terms of what the law is and how do you need to comply with it and what are the remedies available in terms of complaints and so on, but it's also critical from a perception standpoint on when such an issue happens. Fundamentally, of course, both the complainant and accused names have to be kept confidential, but it's also important to sensitively manage the issue because both parties are, and in fact more in the case of the accused, is not guilty unless proven and the process is complete. And so I did hear one of the panelists mention about the fact that the process may have been that possibly you could have sent them on a leave, which is typically the term used is garden leave, where either you move the person to another location or kind of insulate the person from working with the other person who is accused. And in the process, what happens is that your investigation goes on into the complaint that has come in.
Right.
A term like suspension may be considered psychologically harsh by some, but the point here is that if you look at both the cases of both the complainant and the accused, what's critical to have is how do you manage the psychological process of both the parties.
Right.
Because perception matters here. Either of them can take it in the other way around. And can result in tragic circumstances. So, well, management from that perspective does become important. We are not aware of what happened in this particular case and what Genpact's rules are and internal processes are, but at least what's clear is the fact that the process was started. The how part of it is what we are not aware of, and therefore won't be in a right situation to comment.
Sure, sure, and that's what, I want to move to another aspect now. I want to move to the aspect that this entire movement about Me Too has been about women taking back control and then choosing, because a lot of the thing was when you went to the police, then you didn't know how they would react. You would have a lot of hostile confrontation with the police. And so this was about women choosing how they wanted to do it, whether they wanted to do it on social media or they just wanted to go to the police or actually follow it in whatever process they wanted. So I want to ask you, Rutuja, that the fact that they chose the ICC, they chose to go to their company and go to their internal body, and now they are left with the police looking into their allegations. Is that fair, or is that how it is?
See, an offense like abatement, it has a very high burden of proof. Like, you have to show that the person who abated the person to commit suicide had actively engaged or somehow aided or assisted in the act of suicide, and the person who's deceased had no other option than to take his own life. So in such a case, it's a very high, that way there's a very high standard that's been put by law. So just merely just going and complaining to an authority, would that be abatement? In this case, again, I don't know the facts and circumstances completely because we are not aware of what went on, but just a mere complaint cannot be said to be abatement, because in that case nobody would go to the police and complain.
Right, but
But
in order to find out whether they abetted or not, they would also have to go into whether the allegations that were made about what happened on the night of the 15th, whether that's true or not. So in a way, the ICC's work is being done by the police, correct?
See, they have to show that there was an intention of these women to make him commit suicide. That is what abatement is. And if the police is looking into the complaint, and even if, say, the complaint is frivolous, it's baseless, or it's unless it's done maliciously with an intent to make the person commit suicide, it cannot be said to be abatement.
Right. Okay. Sandhya, one of the things, I think we've had this conversation before, and one of the things that, Chinmay and you also in a previous show that we did talked about the fact that, the burden, there's a lot of burden over there that, you think about, like you were saying, you think about all of the people and what the impact is going to be. And I was speaking to Indira Jaising, and she said that, women have to be, before they come out and name the harassers, they have to have their family support, because you have to be prepared for anything that could happen afterwards. And one of the fallouts, the worst kind of fallout, seems to be that the person you're accusing may commit suicide, or somebody implicated in the case may take this kind of a step.
Absolutely. So I'll be very, very honest. When we were talking about this, when Swarup's suicide came on the news, everyone I spoke to said, yeah, we expected something like this to happen. It was going to hit the movement, and you were going to, suffer that bit of setback. And I, for the life of me, couldn't imagine that someone would commit suicide and not stick their ground and fight out, or at least wait till investigation was done. So also, see, the thing is just the way that, and Ms. Jaising is absolutely right when she says you need absolute constant support from your family when you're coming out with an allegation. But also the thing is, right, a lot of women commit suicide when they are faced with harassment. And which brings to the question the actual nature of suicide. Now, can one thing in isolation cause someone to commit suicide? Suicide is a much more complex thing and has a lot to do with overall mental health circumstances of all of that, right? So it's really hard to sort of go out there for the woman without any support, and it's absolutely crucial. Like Chinmay is facing now, complete blackout of work in her industry, like I'm facing now, and a lot of us are facing now, trolling online. There's a lot to come forward, and Mr. Jaising is absolutely right that you've got to have support. And similarly, when someone's accused, the thing to probably do is turn to your family and, I don't know, be honest and gain support, because it's a hard thing to, especially if you're innocent, it's a really hard thing to face.
So, this just is such a tragic case. But I think, Ramesh Kalasam, what I want to ask you is that what do you think will be the lasting impact of this? Will companies change their policy? Will there be some people who are very cynical about this say that this will impact, in fact, the number of women who are hired? And anyway, there are only 25% of Indian women in the workforce in any case. So anyway, it's dismal, the numbers of women who are in the workforce. Do you think this will drive it down even further? Will companies be a little reluctant?
Well, it depends. I mean, if you look at companies which would like to act responsibly, ideally they should be spending more time educating employees and kind of conducting those orientation workshops, primarily to ensure that the behavioral aspect, when such an allegation comes in, the perception is managed better, so that people don't take it as an extreme last kind of no kind of option left kind of a situation. What's therefore critical is behavioral aspects and the perception, as well as the training that an HR may need to further invest on, becomes all the more stronger compared to possibly some of the companies who may have probably considered this as one more law to comply with. Yes. And may have set up processes to kind of tackle with such kind of situation. But certainly if you look at companies, they would certainly would like to invest more, and again, I'm qualifying companies would like to be more responsible. Those who are not, well, it may possibly affect some of their decisions.
Okay, well, we're totally out of time, but what we really hope for is that if there's any particular fallout, it is, as you said, that the companies should just look at tightening all their rules, get their sexual harassment committee in place, and make it a much more viable place for women to work at. We also hope that the Noida police, which is probing this case, just gets to the bottom of it soon, so that the family of Swaroop Raj gets closure soon. Thanks to all my guests. Thanks for watching Reality Check. Goodbye.